It's a non-core banger. Dr. R.O.C dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Ayy, yeah, purpose and practice. Keep your mental sharp, learn all the tactics. Dr. R.O.C dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Ayy, yeah, purpose and practice. Podcast game, ayy, he got it mastered. It's encore. It's a non-core banger. Dr. R.O.C.
Yo, peace. This is Purpose and Practice Podcast. Yo, can't believe we're at episode number 10. Like, that's crazy. Within a month, we put out 10 episodes. This is your host, Dr. R.O.C. Dill. Purpose and Practice, for those of you who are new, what we like to do here is bring forth community. My whole goal is to bring guests to the show who are community people who are building communities, whether it's in the local community they came up in or if they're abroad. I like to go back and hear the stories because many times we see success and we see the end product of success, but very seldom do we learn the behind the scenes, the stories that created that success, the hard time, going through struggles, failing. That's what we like to showcase. And the brothers that we have on today, they're going to do just that. This episode, which I refer to as the R.O.C episode, which we will get into later, in the episode, and I'll let the brothers talk about, that aspect. But with that said, we welcome you. Hopefully everyone is well, and y'all ready to enjoy this journey that we're going to go on for the next hour or so in discovering, some of the paths of the young men that we have here today. We got Ben, we got Duane, we got Mark. Like we got everything. We ready for today. But before we get into anything, let me just go around the horn and see how everybody's feeling. I like to do a check-in. Let's start with you, Ben. How you feeling, fam?
Man, life is good, man. I'm feeling real good, sipping on some water. I had a long night last night, but other than that, everything is great.
That's what's up. Duane, how you feeling?
I feel good. I'm good. I'm grateful. Things are going well. Family's good. It's positive energy. So I'm thrilled to be on the program with you. So I feel great, man.
That's what's up. Welcome to the show. And finally, Mark, how you feeling, bro?
Blessed and highly favored, brother. Just happy to be here. Happy to be able to drop some gems on the people. Health is good. Family is good. I have no complaints.
That's what's up. So, this is a special episode for me. I like these three brothers. I met when they were in high school. I'm going to say all but Ice. Like I knew Duane just kind of coming up. He actually was my grandmother's neighbor in over at 82 Grand Court. So him I knew coming up even as a child. Mark and Ben, I kind of got to meet them during their high school years. But believe it or not, I ran into Mark. And we'll talk. I'm sure we'll get into over, on Liberty or the Rockwell House. I know I met him earlier, but in terms of really establishing relationships and getting to know who he was, it was, once he was in high school. So what I want to do is, what I like to do all the time in this show is kind of go back and get some growing up stories from all of our guests. Today we have 3 guests on the podcast. This is the first time that we've had that, but I thought it's only right, being that we, this rock situation. So I was like, you know what? They all deserve their own episode, but I'm gonna start off like this. You know what I'm saying? So let's start off with Ben, man. We like to start off with early years growing up. How we came up, situations like that.
Yeah, man. So just like all of us on the podcast, grew up in Long Branch, New Jersey. It was fun, man. Normal childhood. We were all pretty similar. The fellas, we were young hustlers, man. And whenever we had a goal or something that we wanted to get at, we just grinded, we shoveled snow, all that stuff just to get $1, you know what I'm saying? But it was good, man. Childhood was good.
Go ahead, Ice.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned it kind of to kick off the intro. Grew up in public housing, ABC Grand Court. Came from a good family, but was we faced challenges from the society and the culture of being in the Black community. So I was blessed to have a very good, strong mother who instilled good core values. Laid a real good foundation and also led by example. So a lot of my childhood and upbringing was really, I got to thank her, for allowing me to become and raise me up to be a strong, independent family man. And that's, pretty much what I am today. So, we grew up in Grand Court. We know the obstacles were and the challenges we faced, but I thank God that during that time, Grand Court was a community, you know what I'm saying? And you had leaders in the community who policed the community. So a kid like me, somebody who had potential in, they steered me and guided me in the right way. You know what I'm saying? So that my childhood, I really owe to a lot of people, man. It'll take me just the list out of everybody I could think. You know what I'm saying? Just growing up in Grand Court and public housing and coming up through Long Branch school systems, the teachers that, really took their time to get to know me as a young kid, invest in me. You know what I'm saying? I owe a lot of thanks to them. But I'll touch on more of some specific stuff as we kind of have some more dialogue. But I had a normal childhood for someone growing up in public housing who made it out.
That's what's up. Thank you, man. And shout out to Miss Debbie. Miss Debbie was like, yo, that was my first job. I was fortunate enough, my first job ever was to have Miss Debbie as my manager, right? She was the supervisor manager. I was like, I think I was a senior in high school and about to go off to college. And when I tell you, like, she was like the mom on the job, she was the mom on the job and kept us in check and made sure that, we had what we needed, but we were doing the things that we needed. So definitely a shout out to your mom's Ice, Miss Debbie. Definitely a shout out to her. Mark, what's up, fam? Growing up.
Peace. Again, my name is Mark Armour. Grew up in Long Branch as well. Grew up on Cooper Avenue. My story is similar to Ben's and Duane's. I lost my mother at a young age. I was raised by my grandparents, and they weren't quite, I wouldn't call them wealthy, but I would say I grew up very wealthy, that I had a male and a strong male and a female parent in the house as my grandparent. My grandfather taught me everything I know. I am who I am today because of him. He was the most influential person in my life. I'm very thankful for what he taught me. I grew up on Cooper Avenue, but yet I always hung out in the projects. So the book Rich Dad Poor Dad really sat home with me because I had two lifestyles. Like I worked in the golf course on Deal. I seen that lifestyle, and I hung out on Central and Liberty, and I seen that lifestyle, and it kind of let me know which way I wanted to go in life and who I wanted to navigate to. So seeing both sides of the track really helped me, decide where I wanted to go in life. So I'm thankful for growing up in Long Branch, hanging out in the hood, and growing up in, hanging out in Deal as well, because it made me a very well-rounded person. Not many people can sit in a boardroom or sit in a trap and be comfortable in both places. And because of my upbringing, I can sit in either place and fit in just fine.
Yo, that would you just hit on, Mark? We definitely gonna get on and get into in this episode, but it made me when you talked about Mr. Armour, and I remember growing up. Like I said, I grew up in between Garfield Court and Grand Court, right? So on Liberty Street, Mr. Armour had a home, correct, Mark?
Correct.
And that home was like, when I tell you, like, everyone was welcome there, like, I just remember growing up and just, if there was like a yard that you wanted to play in, if you wanted to be at a barbecue, if you like, it was at the Armour house. Like, so
Right.
definitely a shout out, you know, to Mr. Armour, because we just, it kind of gave you also an aspiration of like, yo, you know, look at that house, you know what I'm saying? Look at that property. You know, and being from the projects, it was something that we can touch and something that we can feel. And one for me anyway, was one of the earliest memories of home ownership, of having a home, of having a space big enough where community can come. And when I tell you, like, you know, that house was always like, it was always open to folks, you know, it wasn't like this exclusionary place. So definitely, you know, a shout out to Mr. Armour, to the Armour family. So what I want to get into next is I want to touch on what you brothers are doing now, so that then we can backtrack and find out how you made it to these spaces. I think you all are unique in many ways, but also similar in many ways. So, you know, I'm gonna start off with Duane. Duane, if you could just, you know, break down to us what you're doing now in terms of profession, if you could share that with us in the podcast.
Yeah. So I'm a commercial banker, wealth management commercial banker. I work with privately held companies, typically with revenues less than 20 million, assisting with cash flow management, providing access to capital, you know, lending money. You know, I help doctors start up practices. I help businesses expand. I help business owners plan for the future, really protect their company. I've been doing that now for about 12 years. I started through a management training program. I got a story I'll share with how that came about. But really, I just worked my way up. As a kid, you know, I always was into entrepreneurship. I enjoyed the flexibility of being able to control your own destiny and work on your time. But also, I wanted to be compensated for my performance. You know what I'm saying? If I was going to outwork somebody, I wanted to reap the benefits. You know what I'm saying? Whether it was sports, if I'm going to get up early and take more shots, you know what I'm saying? Or if I'm going to spend more time in the books, I want to be able to reap the benefits, you know? And that's one thing when you're talking about in an industry like sales, whether you're selling, you know, lollipops or debt, you know, the numbers don't lie. So, you know, I really wanted to kind of leverage my upbringing, my resiliency, and but also my passion for small business, you know? I remember growing up in Grand Court, where there was a time when housing authority, they had enforced a rule where they mandated that your grass had to be a certain height. You know what I'm saying? Or they would start charging people. Nobody in the hood got lawnmowers. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's rare. These were the push mowers at the time. So if you wanted your grass cut, you had to go to the housing authority, sign out a lawnmower and cut your grass. You know what I'm saying? Cut the grass. Nobody did it. So I was probably like my son age, maybe 10 or so at the time. And I went there, made up some flyers like, hey, you know, I'll cut your grass, $7 for the front, $10 for the front and back. And I think that's what kind of started it. You know, people, you know, I got a lot of support. I think a lot of people appreciated a young guy trying to make an honest living. I think Big June was one of the guys who I had on a bi-weekly plan. He was very supportive, and I had some other people that was very supportive, but that kind of started it. Then we got into, you know, lollipops and Napster, burning DVDs and T-shirts and all of that stuff. But once I got into college, I'm like, you know what? For me to start a business, I need to kind of understand it. And that's what made me study finance. And so I've been really helping small businesses for the past 10 years, really grow, expand, kind of plan for the future. And I really enjoy it.
Yo, thanks for sharing that, man. So much you dropped there. And before we move on and find out more about, you know, what Ben and Mark, what they're doing right now, I wanted to touch on something that you shared. And when I think of generations, right? One of the things, you know, in my generation, and I'm not too far removed from your generation, but I feel like your generation, and that's why I wanted to talk to y'all brothers, is because I feel like y'all really had that bug or that passion for entrepreneurship. Like, y'all ain't want to work for nobody. And it was like, and if you were part of a corporation, there was going to be a merit base to that. There was going to be like, yo, if I'm putting this work in, you know, my compensation is going to look different than someone who's not putting this work in, you know, whereas my generation, we were closer to, our parents were closer to the age of like the Great Depression and holding on to everything and not taking risks and saying, yo, we just got to like, our grandmothers felt that way. We got to buckle down. You get a job, you work that job for 30, 25 years, 30 years, you retire. Like we weren't about like, yo, create your own, do your own. And the more you study about our people, you know, in Black people, you know, we created things. And, you know, especially, and I don't want to go too much off of a tangent, but with education and where we're at right now with education in terms of a lot of our children are being homeschooled, there was a time where obviously we weren't allowed into public school educational facilities. So we had to create our own. And that was a piece of, you know, when you look at the educational aspect, that was a piece of what you just said. It was like, yo, we got to create our own community in terms of education. How are we going to do it? How are we going to sustain it and make sure that we are training up our young people, you know, to be who they need to be? So definitely that entrepreneur piece is fire. And I really, you know, in this episode, I want to touch more on that with all of you, because that is something that I believe is really essential to our future generations. So Mark, won't you hop in and give us, you know, kind of like an overview of what you're doing now, you know, professionally?
All right. I'm a commodities broker for an agricultural conglomerate called JBS. I've been in the industry since 2007. It's actually I've only had 2 jobs since I graduated college in 2007. And it's going basically from one business unit to a different business unit within the company. It was very ironic how I got the job. I used to work for the dean of my department when I was in college at A&T, North Carolina A&T, the greatest university of all time. Shameless plug. And I got invited to a corporate sponsorship dinner, and it was basically all the companies that come recruit at my school. They would basically, the school would throw a dinner to thank them, and there was like the top students got to go to the dinner and kind of get an early network before the day before the career fair. So anyway, I pull up on a table, and there's 5 employees from Cargill, and there's 6 chairs. So I just like anybody sitting there? And nobody. They said no. So I sat down, and I'm reading everybody's name tag and what they do. And then, you know, everybody's name tag say commodities. And I'm saying, so Mark, what are you interested in doing after graduation? I said, commodities. What you mean? So I just politicked my way through the dinner and got an interview the next day. Had a good interview the next day. They flew me out to Kansas like 3 weeks later. Before second semester of my senior year, I had a job offer and I took it. And it was in Atlanta. When I graduated, I had 3 offers. I had an offer in St. Paul, Minnesota, Peoria, Illinois, and Atlanta, Georgia. Mind you, Atlanta paid the least, but it was a no-brainer. I went with Cargill in Atlanta, and so call it 2008, 2009. My goal was to, you know, get in with the corporate company, learn the ins and outs, and bounce. But 2009, you know, the market crashed, the economy crashed. So I had a good paying job with stability. So I said, man, I'm gonna stay my ass right here where I know everything is good. And, you know, next thing I know, 5-6 years have gone past and I'm a subject matter expert in my field and I'm making really good money. And now I've been in the business for about 13 years, actually, May 2007. So yeah, 13 years I've been in the commodities business. I also do real estate on the side. I have several rental properties that I do. And that's just one thing I learned from my grandfather. You know, always keep rental properties, always keep rental income. You always want to have supplemental income coming in, have multiple streams of income. Besides the rentals, I have my own TV mounting business, Mark Mounts TVs. Another shameless plug. If you're in Atlanta, you need your TV mounted, holla at me. I'll take care of you. And besides that, you know, I'm just raising my family. And that's it.
Yo, that's what's so you touched on so many things, and a lot we're going to get into in the podcast. One of the things I want to bring up, which you said, was when you said you sat at that boardroom table. A, it was an open space, and you took a seat at the table, right? B, you observed. You know, you did the knowledge to the situation. It was like, all right, commodities. Everybody got this commodities. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to throw it out there. You know what I'm saying? Do I know about commodities right now? No. But you know what? I'm gonna put it out there.
I'm gonna know by tomorrow when this interview come up, though.
But see, and that's the important part, you know, Mark, is that you didn't just say, all right, I'm gonna put that out there, but then you went and you researched and you found out what you needed to know about that. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, you know, one of the things young folks out there, sometimes we always think that the opportunity has to come to us, right? Sometimes, you know, I definitely believe in times and spaces, in times and places. But I also believe that when that space and time come together, you have to be willing to step out and be like, yo, this is my time. You know what I'm saying? Like that whole thing, closed mouths don't get fed. You probably heard that before. You know, like, this is my time. This is my moment. The worst thing that could happen when Mark sat at that table is someone saying, don't sit there. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the worst thing that could have happened. The second worst thing that could have happened is someone saying, well, you know what? What do you know about commodities? You know what I'm saying? And you know what? You can't roll here. And then he would have just taken it to the other level, and he would have just eventually found his path. But I think that sometimes we have to step out, whether you want to call it on faith, whether you want to call it like, yo, I understand what kind of hustle it's going to take for me to get from point A to point B to point C, and I'm going to put that work in, you know, like Mark just explained. But I think that that's important, you know, is putting yourself out there and not being afraid of doing just that. So thank you, Mark, for sharing that. We're going to move on to the brother Ben. Ben, tell us, you know, like what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I kind of have like a dual role in the basically money management. So I work for a government contracting company. I'm on the senior leadership team there. So basically I manage 3 different contracts, about 25 people. But my day job, I'm also doing contract work for that company. So I'm a senior resource manager with a government client, and I manage 3 departments. Just anything money-wise. I do all their budgeting, spending, tracking, all sorts of stuff, man. So I manage about $1 billion. And yeah, so I've been in this space for a few years now. So this is going on 3 years of me being a contractor. And prior to that, I worked directly for the government, managing money there as well. So I've been doing this for about altogether 8 years now. So I like it, man.
Yo, so we have 3 brothers who are on the show who I think can talk to us a lot about whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's career moves, whether it's money management. And I have to be honest, that's something, and I'm only speaking for myself, that I didn't learn a lot about money management as a child. You understand what I'm saying? I didn't learn about multiple streams of income. I think Mark had mentioned that, like his grandfather hipped him to that, like multiple streams of income, having properties. That came to me later in my professional years. You know, and the fact that you all kind of like were exposed to that or interested in that, you know, at younger years, I think it's important. But I also think it's never too late to take control of your financial freedom. You know what I'm saying? So I want to put that out there because a lot of times it feels like, well, you know what, I've gone this long, so you know, I'm just going to keep going along, you know, along this path. But I want to get into that in terms of like how we can, as a people, how we can, you know, get back our financial freedom. And we'll get into that as we move on into this conversation. So one of the things that I want to go back to, and when I talked about meeting, you know, these brothers, is, you know, there was a group that was formed, and it was the R.O.C. It was resolving our conflicts, right? So when I first came into education, this was probably like maybe 99, maybe 98, 99, maybe 2000. It was 98. It was like 98. and y'all probably can correct me, if I'm wrong, but there was Miss Gilmore, and Miss Gilmore had reached out to me because there weren't too many Black educators in the middle school and high school. Okay, I was a Black teacher at the time. I didn't know Miss Gilmore. Shout out to Miss Gilmore. Miss Gilmore came to me and said, "Listen," she said, "Elford, there is a group that we have. It's called Resolving Our Conflicts, right?" And she was like, "I would love for you to come and be a part of this group." So I was like, "Well, tell me more about it." And she started explaining the situation in terms of, there's this young Black men who I am trying to create mentorship opportunities for, and making sure that they understand their greatness. But not only that, but making sure they understand how to navigate systems in order to get where they need to be, as young men, young Black men. So I was like, yo, I'm all for that, right? So I was at the middle school at the time, and I had to use my lunch break and my prep to come over to the meetings. And we used to meet when it first started. I know there was a small room right when you entered the high school from the middle school area, where we would meet in a small classroom. And there was more members. This is not all of the R.O.C. Let me just put that out there. There's a lot more members who were part of that group, and definitely respect out to them, and even RIP out to Chip. And I know, that was so powerful to me in terms of being in a space like that. So what I would like to do, because a lot of those spaces, believe it or not, they don't exist anymore in terms for, this kind of mentorship. And like I said, shout out to Ms. Gilmore, because she was a Black woman who was putting this work in, and then grabbed me in as a Black man to help along with this process. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that, and for you all to talk about, that experience with the R.O.C, that experience with, with resolving our conflict. So, anybody who wants to hop in first and kind of just talking about that experience, feel free.
Yeah, man.
I'll go ahead and start on. The best thing for the R.O.C was me is being in a group with like-minded individuals and seeing, having Black male professors. I don't think my first Black teacher that I had was a Black male was Tyrone Hamlin, 7th grade. And I think in Long Branch, in our matriculation through there, I only know 3, Hamlin, Bennett, and you. I never had a class with Mr. Bennett, but I never had a class with you either. But Tyrone Hamlin was the only African-American male teacher I knew coming through Long Branch. So it was a good situation to be in a group with like-minded individuals and have the mentorship of African-American male, because up until that point, we hadn't had it.
And I have this, Mark, I gotta say, it was the same for me. I went through all of elementary, middle school, and high school without a Black teacher, right? Now, or a Black male teacher. Actually, Black male teacher. I take that back. One thing that I did have when I was at Leonard Conroe is we had a Black principal, Mr. Mantley. Shout out to Mr. Mantley, RIP to Mr. Mantley. He was our principal. You mentioned Tyrone Hamlin. And when I first started teaching, he was one of the brothers who took me under his wing, kind of showed me the way, kind of kept me, one step ahead, so to speak, in terms of understanding what I was navigating as a Black professional, So that Black male teacher thing is so critical. And it's absent, I have to say, and I don't know what the situation is now, in Long Branch, but I just know, period, the research tells us 84% of teachers in this country are white females. Okay, so that's all I need to know in order to understand that there's a shortage of Black male teachers. All right, so definitely a shout out to those. And Mr. Bennett was another one. He was a substitute teacher when I first started. And he was another brother that kept us kind of like, yo, this is what you need to do, this is how you need to do it, and this is how you need to operate. So, Duane, why don't you hit us up and explain to us that whole R.O.C. And R.O.C, and what role that played for you?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what Mark said, if you think about the time, I think 97, 98, I mean, we were all big Jay-Z fans. You had the R.O.C coming together. It was, probably the largest largest group in hip hop at the time. We all loved Jay-Z. So we thought we were the coolest guys, and that R.O.C. made it. It was a way where we had Black leadership, people who invested time in us, but in a way that it was fun, and we were all coming together. It wasn't on the basketball court. It wasn't on the football field. It was outside, outside of the class. Outside of the classroom for the most part. It was off peak school hours, and it felt good to kind of just have dialogue on that level about being better. About creating opportunities, about socializing. It established purpose. It gave us at a young age meaning. And I thought it was great. I thought it was great, and I wasn't probably as active as Mark and R.I.P. to Karan. Karan was a great leader, and he was someone who I think, man, he had all the potential. He probably would be in politics right now. Be a big community activist. But he was someone who we had someone like him who was kind of the face of it. And it felt good, being with Mark, being with a lot of the other guys, and kind of just talking about, growth, and talk about opportunities, being successful, and it was a great time. And it's unfortunate because we don't really have these type of programs out, at least that I'm aware of. There's not as many of these type of mentorship programs out there, and but at that time I think it was definitely needed. And I was just happy to be a part of it.
And in that, before we get to you, Ben, and I had said R.I.P. Chips. I should have said Karan. Karan Laws, R.I.P. to Karan Laws, because that's where I first met him. Now, I had learned about him though through one of my, professional friends, Regina Schaefer, who is actually, I believe that's either her nephew or her cousin. But she was like telling me all this stuff about him, like, yo, you got to meet him. You got to meet him. She was a teacher at the time at the middle school. And it was funny how I eventually met him was through, Miss Gilmore introducing me to the group. And what you said, Duane, what you said about him is so spot on. Like, you talk about charisma, you talk about like intelligence. And the way I always saw him was like, and we say this a lot, but I really mean it. Like, anything he wanted to be able to do and master, he was one of those brothers that was like, I can make it happen, but he was also someone who I like to think of. Some of us have this magnetic attraction. We have this power to bring others towards something that we're trying to accomplish. And he had that. And when I saw over the weekend, I saw a picture, Mark, you were down at the football game, with his son. And, I saw that picture, you at the fence, like shaking his hand. And I'm like, that really like blew me away, fam. Like, it was like, it just brought, it was like a connection, and I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, Mark, before we get to Ben. But being in that space, and then continuing to support the legacy, because that's his legacy. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is his legacy. If it's something personal, Mark, don't feel obligated.
No. I'd be remiss if I didn't speak on it. Like everybody said, R.I.P. Karan Laws, one of my better friends my entire life. We grew up right down the street from each other. I used to be in his house. He used to be in my house all the time. Je ne sais quoi, charisma. He had it. I don't know anybody that knew Karan that didn't like Karan. There's a lot of people that didn't like me. A lot of people that didn't like Duane. A lot of people that didn't like Ben. But Karan got along with everybody. Like, he didn't have no enemies. He was just the type of kid that really got along with everybody. Always had a big smile on his face. Just a genuine good dude all around. The last time I seen Karan, I was in New Jersey, and I hadn't seen him in a couple years. I talked to him, but I hadn't seen him in like a year or two, and I was at Applebee's, and we just picked up like we never left off. And being who he was, he pulled out a bunch of money. He was like, I gotta pay for your dinner. And being who I am, I stood up and pulled out a little bit of money too. I'm like, man, I gotta pay for your dinner. And we both arguing about who gonna pay for you meals. And growing up, I didn't really tell, men, like my grandfather never said, Mark, I love you. Or my dad never said, Mark, I love you. I know they love me, but it was never really expressed. But Karan was one of the type of people, even way back before, we do it now, but even at a younger age of 18, 19, Karan would always be like, I love you. And he told me he loved me the last time I seen him. It just really resonated with me. He was a good friend. When he died, it really, really hurt. Of all the people to lose, we lost a great one. And his sons and I, we have a real uncle-nephew type relationship because one, I love their father like a brother, so his kids are my kids. Two, I know for a fact if it was the other way around, he would take my sons underneath his wing. And they're now in Georgia, so I really plan on being a big influence on their lives because, like I said, I love their father. He was like family to me, so they like family to me, and I'm really going to do all I can to help them be successful. But absolutely, R.I.P. Karan.
Definitely. And thank you for sharing that. Like that, that is, we say that sometimes, this world, it takes people back into transition, and we say it's far sooner than they need to be in transition. And it's funny because what I remembered about him, and it was from a distance, is what you just said, Mark, is I felt he had the ability to bring people together. Like there's not too many folks out there who have that ability to be a leader and to really bring people from different perspectives and backgrounds together for one common cause. And he definitely, was one of them folks. And I really feel his kids, his sons, I watched the debate, and if you haven't had a chance to see them, especially you shaking that debate, I was watching him at one of the schools, and I was like, and it was the younger son, I believe,
Kyrie,
yes,
a savant. He speaks like a grown man. Kyrie is a savant. It's poetry in motion to hear him talk.
I was so impressed that I was like, at that point, I start measuring. I was like, can my son talk like that? And if not, and you said savant, which I think is key, there's some people who are just now naturally gifted, but I also was like, what I got to start doing to make sure little L can speak like that, or how can I bring this into a school program where more young people are being taught to be orators? So definitely, shout out, to Karan, and RIP, to Karan. So we have touched, this is, I always know when we need more than one episode for people. This is definitely going to be one of those episodes because we're just scratching the surface. We haven't even gotten into anything yet. But what I want to get into next is I want to talk about failure. All right. So we went back to you growing up. We talked about what you're doing now. A lot of times it's hard to see, for young folks especially, it's hard to see like, how do I move from this space to that space in meaning progression? And when I fail, what do I do? So what I would like to do is to get a story from each of you about a time that you failed, a time that you felt like, you know what, I ain't doing my best, or I didn't do my best. That wasn't the example of what I can be, whether that was professionally, whether that was personally. I really want to hear that. And I would like, Ben, I would like for you to start us off on that. If you can just talk to us about a time when you failed, and think about young folks out there who may be going through trials and tribulations and maybe going through failure, and how you can respond, to such failure.
Yeah, man. So I would say early on, so I'm blessed to have experienced failure at an early age and was able to use that as kind of jet fuel, per se, to kind of propel me to the position that I'm in now and where I'm trying to go. I actually didn't let failure stop my progress. All I knew is I never wanted to be broke again. So I was like, because I'm not used to it, man. Like growing up, like I always had jobs, and I was the neighborhood DJ and stuff. So I always did pretty well for myself financially. But moving out, going to college, and being 18, and living on my own and stuff like that, man, like it just wasn't working out. The first couple of years were rough, man. I ended up failing out of school. Like I wasn't really going to class. So this was between ages 18 to about 20. And I was just a knucklehead, man, just young, being in Baltimore. I never really did anything bad per se, but I was just doing regular kid stuff, drinking and partying and just having a blast. But my problem was I didn't have any goals. I was just living in the moment. I wanted to be a tough guy for about a year, so I was like, maybe I'm gonna be a thug, because I was just letting other people like rub off of me. I was moving with the wrong crowds and stuff like that. So what really changed everything around was I got, I don't want to say this girl pregnant, but I had a baby on the way. So I was 20 years old when I found out that my daughter Taylor was about to be born and stuff like that. And I was like, man, like I really got to get my life together. Like I can't be out here just moving this way. Like I want to be a positive influence for her. So I kind of just, from there, just really turned my life around and really started to focus. So between like 20 to 25, I decided to go back into school. So I had to, clear up some debt and pay off all my parking tickets, because it was just a mess. I was in a bad place, man. But so between 20 and 25, I worked on my credit. I worked on paying down my student loans, so I was able to qualify for aid again. Did all of that stuff. And then finally, I was able to re-enroll in school at age 25. And I basically had to start all over again. So I'm a 25-year-old freshman. But the good thing about that is going to school later in life is you kind of know what direction you want to go, because I had some life experience under my belt. So during that time, before me going back into college, I found stocks. And I was like, damn, I really like stocks. Like, this is interesting to me, because I always like money. But I didn't know that there was a major out there that you could actually learn about, stocks and investing and things like that. So I ended up going to school for finance. And man, I just grinded. From 25 to 30, I was able to get my undergrad and then my master's, but I grinded hard. Like it was insane. Like, all my friends would be out partying and I'd be home studying and staying up late. I'd be working all day, then go to class until 10. And I mean, I was sacrificing, man, but you really got to put in that hard work if you're trying to, make it to where you're trying to get to. But it also puts a strain on your friends and family, because you're so focused on trying to move forward. You kind of lose touch with people, I'd say. So I mean, the sacrifice and the grind is hard, man. It's definitely not for everybody, but everybody's capable of doing it if you just stay focused, on your goals. But that's key. You have to have goals. Like, you're not going to be motivated to do anything unless you know where you're aiming for. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's key for me. Just having big goals, short-term goals, and chipping away at them every day. And that's what kind of keeps me motivated, man. But I feel like I had to experience failure first in order for me to never want to be in that position again. And like I said, I'm blessed that it happened early, and it really knocked some sense into me, man, because I was a little knucklehead, man.
And we all were, Mark. I mean, I'm sorry, not Mark, but Ben. We all were. I'm gonna get to Mark next, but you touched on when I talk to young, if someone brings me in and I want you to talk to high school students, I always tell them, like, the 4 years of high school and the 4 years that follow high school are usually the most critical years of your life, right? So when you start looking at, and this is, I'm not saying that this is like 100% imperial, all right? This is just like what I have learned. If your 4 years of high school and the decisions and the choices that you make in 4 years of high school and 4 years post high school have a large impact on the rest of your life. And you kind of just like broke that down in what you spoke to, which when we do your solo episode, we'll get deeper into, because you dropped a lot right there. You touched on that. you know, especially those 4 years after high school. Like you really touched on that. And what I got out of that was there was a lot of getting off of the mat. There was a lot of like, all right, I got to get up. You know what I'm saying? And I got to continue to fight. And that's something that definitely, when we have your separate episode all to yourself, we're definitely going to touch in on, because you dropped a lot right there that kind of got me thinking. So, Mark, if you can talk to us about failure, you know, you definitely have become an accomplished young man, but we would definitely like to hear more about where there were situations, whether it was self-doubt, whether it was failure, you know, or whatever. It's like, yo, I didn't hit the mark. We want to hear about that.
You know, I've had at least 20 minutes, 15 minutes to think about it. And I honestly, man, to me growing up, failure was never an option for me. So I don't really ever feel like I failed because I didn't have the opportunity or the luxury to fail. I always had a strong mindset, always was well taught. Like I said, my grandfather was on me about everything. He taught me a lot of stuff. So failure was never an option to me. Like when I left high school to go to college, you know, my room when I lived with my grandmother, when I left, another cousin was in that room. So like I couldn't even go back home once I left for college. So there was never no me not making it through college, because I knew if I didn't pass each semester, I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. You know, if I didn't get another financial aid refund check the following semester, I was going to be out in the cold. So I could never fail. I might have slowed down, but I've never felt like at any point in my 35 years of life that I failed in anything, because it wasn't an option. It was either win or die. You know what I mean? So I always kept pushing myself and never let myself. I didn't have the luxury to fail. I couldn't go back home after high school, after I went off to college. I've seen a lot of people that had, you know, wealthier parents or had a situation where if they flunked out, they could just go back home. I couldn't. If I went back home, I was sleeping on the couch. I couldn't go back home. I was a very prideful man. I was very confident. And once I got that first taste of real freedom and adulthood and being, you know, responsible for all my actions, I never wanted to relinquish that and live under anybody's roof or never be the captain of my fate again. So I don't have a story for when I failed. I never failed, and I won't fail because I can't. Now I'm not worried about failing for myself. Now I got my sons looking up to me. I can't fail for them. I won't fail.
Yo, you just listen. I was reading recently, maybe about a month ago, and I haven't had a chance to really do the research on it, but it was an article and I was reading about, and they were talking about how eagles create the nest. Like think of the mother eagle. The mother eagle creates a nest, not out of comfort, but out of discomfort. So the mother eagle creates a nest. And when I say eagle, I'm talking about birds right now. That looks like this. Okay. Usually we're used to nests looking like this, where you can sit in it and you can have comfort. The mother eagle creates a nest that looks like this. All right. And the reason for that is when the baby eagles come about and they fly off for that first time and they try to return to that nest, it's not comfortable. And you hit on, Mark, when you start talking about it's either, it's survive or die. The eagle that we know to be the predator, to be the master of the sky, if that eagle ever felt when they met any type of adversity that, I can just go back to the nest. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe it wouldn't be the species that we know it today. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it wouldn't be that. So when you hit on that, it made me think like, wow, and I think about that. I was talking to my wife and we battle with that because I was thinking about it in terms of parenthood, because I was like, I don't want to create no space where my kids feel like, anytime I can go back. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though I'm gonna love my kids regardless, but it's like, I want them to feel like, all right, I gotta make it out in this world. And it's not an easy, like, all right, I'm gonna go back home. because that to me changes a lot of our psychology when we're out in the world in terms of like, oh, I can fail because I can always go back home. So thank you for speaking on that and being honest, you know, in on that thought, Mark.
Mark. So definitely, definitely. Like I had that too. I remember when I left, my mom was like, "Man, it's either college or the army, but you ain't coming back home." So I mean, to me, it's like a good thing because it forces you to go out there and really try and grind. You know, not having that support. I don't want to say not having that support system, but not having that fallback. You know what I'm saying? I can't go back. So it's like, man, I really got to push. But it takes a certain kind of person to really use that as fuel to succeed. This world will eat you alive. You know what I'm saying? If you're not out here really trying to get it, you're going to just fail. You won't be a failure. You know what I'm saying? So that's all.
And I think that, again, it goes back to us having these different perspectives on failure, and it gets into parenthood, which in my book club, we talk a lot about parenting. And it makes you start, you know, like, do I want to be that parent that creates this nice, comfortable space? Or do I want to be that hardcore parent? Or do I want to find that balance, you know, in between? Duane, how about you, man? If you had to talk to us a little bit about that.
So failing is really not in my vocabulary. You know what I'm saying? I look at, you know, failure as more of a setback. You know what I'm saying? It's an opportunity to kind of regroup. And I'm also someone, you know, the power of my subconscious mind, like I'm going to create opportunities for myself where, you know, if something's meant for me, you know, it'll be for me. You know what I'm saying? So I haven't had experienced failure. I've had times where, you know, certain outcomes maybe didn't go the way that I thought they were, but just through patience and perseverance, things turned out better. And I was happier, you know, in the long run. But Mark had mentioned back in, I think he said 2007, when he went to that board meeting and he sat down and he had a job secured his junior year, right? And we all the same. We all the same age, right? And the thing is that, you know, I don't want the audience to miss this point, but we stay in touch. We brothers, you know what I'm saying? From growing up to, you know, the college experience to being parents, we all stayed in touch. And I seen Ben almost every day, you know what I'm saying? When we was in college. So a lot of things that he mentioned, you know, going through that period of transition into being a man, you know, I experienced that too, you know what I'm saying? But when I needed somebody to uplift me, I had him. When he needed somebody to uplift him, you know, I was there for him. I always tell him, Ben the smartest guy I know. And even to this day, I tell him, listen, you can be anything you want to be. You the smartest guy I know, from being gifted to coming up. If he wanted to pursue his PhD, it's all him. But back in 2007 or 2008, that time, Mark, you secured a job, right? So your senior year, you felt good. I was interning for Wells Fargo on their corporate trust services. I was working in asset-backed securities, and it was like managing probably budgets and working in Excel. I was sitting in a cubicle and stuff like that. And, you know, as an intern, I was making a good salary, you know what I'm saying? But that, you know, I had goals, and that wasn't what I wanted to do. But I remember kind of slacking off, and, you know, I was making a little bit of money and going to school, and I think I got a D in the class, and I didn't want to graduate, you know, I wanted to take that class over, you know what I'm saying? So I remember not going through with my internship, which, you know, with that, so I didn't have a job my senior year, right? Coming out of college. It took actually went to school for another semester, and I think I graduated in December. That's when I finished. And then boom, you know, the recession hit, the Great Recession hit, you know, things changed, you know. So after I graduated school, I wasn't sure what my career path would be. You know, I started working for a nonprofit organization as a corporate financial analyst, and I was still working, you know, working in Excel, sitting at a cubicle, you know, crunching numbers. But, you know, my dream was small business, passion, controlling my own destiny. So me and my wife, and I won't get into that now, but I wouldn't be married if it wasn't for Ben, and that's a whole nother story. It needs his own episode, but definitely salute to my man Ben, because I got to thank him for my beautiful wife and my kids. But we ended up dating or whatever, and she's a teacher, as you know, but she was probably in her first or second year of teaching. We was doing a long distance thing, and I remember like wanting to go work in New York, sending my resume out there. I had some analytical financial managerial experience under my belt. I thought I'd be good. Nobody was hiring, right? So I'm like, damn, what I'm gonna do? So I ended up applying for, my mom was in banking too. So my mom had got me some part-time customer service job. So I had a little bit of banking experience under my belt too. Salute to my mom, because she, that work ethic, you know what I'm saying? Do what you got to do. You know what I'm saying? Don't give up on your dreams, but do what you got to do. So I ended up applying for a bank as like a personal banker, at a finance degree experience. It was a fraction of the pay, and I didn't get those jobs. You know what I'm saying? So then an opportunity came for me to get into this management training program, and out of like 300 people, I was one of 4 selected. So if it wasn't for me actually, not having a job secured coming out of college, and maybe failing that class, I might have spent 5 or 6 years being very unhappy at a job, maybe not being able to provide for my family at this level, and not being able to be a homeowner. So I take failure as a setback, an opportunity to really think about, what you want to do. But maybe God closed that door to open up a better one. So that's my perspective on failure. That's how I kind of operate.
Thanks, fam. Like, y'all all setting us up nice for when we do y'all solo episodes, because we're definitely gonna come back and do that. You touched on a lot, Duane. All 3 of you touched on a lot in terms of that we can go so much deeper into. But for an episode where I have all 3 of you on, which I thought was only right to kick it off, we can't delve so deep into those different unique stories. But one thing I want to bring to you all is this, and see what your thoughts are on it, because it's something that I struggle with. I've struggled with historically. I still struggle with this. Is survivor's remorse, right? And I talked to a lot of guests about survivor's remorse, and that piece of it's such a thin line between me being the Ben I am today as opposed to being not the Ben I am today, and the same with the Duane and the Mark that I am today. And sometimes we feel guilty, for having the opportunities that we have now. And then we feel some of my peers, growing up, they were on another level, and they would be, if you think I'm great, we already talked about Quran, but if you think I'm great, you have no idea, and sometimes we feel guilty about that. That's a real psychological term in terms of survivor's remorse. And I think it hits our community, survivor's remorse hits our community more than any other community in terms of the obstacles and the trials that we overcome, in order to get to the spaces that we're at. And sometimes we feel guilty, So I'm interested to hear from you all in terms of that, survivor's remorse, and if it plays any role. Maybe you don't, you're that's not real to me, but even if that's the case, I would love to hear it. Mark, if you don't mind, kicking off with that and telling us more about that.
All right. I definitely understand what you mean when you say survivor's remorse. I don't have survivor's remorse, but I do recognize what you're talking about. Whenever I talk to somebody younger than me, I always talk about wasted talent. And I'm gonna be honest, coming from Long Branch, that is one of the biggest cities full of wasted talent. We have so many athletes, so many great minds that could have been somebody, should have been somebody, but they're not, because of the wasted talent and the Long Branch doesn't cultivate talent the way a lot of other places do. I left Long Branch my sophomore year and moved to North Carolina, and I think it saved my life. I'm so glad I got out of Long Branch. I tell Duane every time I talk to him, look, bro, get out of Jersey, come south. And I hate that it's like that, but to me, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, it is 10 times harder for a black man to excel in New Jersey than it is for him to excel in Georgia, in Atlanta, in Charlotte, in New Orleans, in Houston. It's so much easier because you're around so many more like-minded brothers, and there's so many different networks that you have that you don't have in New Jersey. It's only a handful of top-tier successful black men in the 30 to 38-year-old category in Long Branch, in the whole Monmouth County, that you can network with, opposed to here in Atlanta where every other person is a successful black person. Not to get off on a tangent, but I don't have survivor's remorse. I do recognize it. I do realize that some people, a lot of us had the same opportunities, and some chose to make more of the opportunity than they did, and some didn't. I notice it, and I hate that it happened, but I don't feel bad for anybody. I just gotta, worry about myself. And I do use those lessons. I do talk about certain people that I grew up with that shoulda, coulda, woulda, and I'm definitely gonna teach my son about, the friends that I had that were, 5-star athletes, and you never even heard of them because they didn't take, they didn't do what they should have done. They didn't cultivate the talent that they had. And wasted talent is one of the greatest travesties in life. And Long Branch is full of wasted talent. My personal opinion. Sorry if I offended anyone. I'm not sorry if I offended.
Nah, don't. Yeah, because you ain't sorry. In that, because I know, just from following you social media, Mark, I know a lot about your feelings on different things. And when you said you're sorry, I'm like, he ain't sorry because that's how he put it out there. But you know what? That's important, and that's why when I talk about finding that balance, and not being, and I always try to surround myself with kind of diverse opinions on things. So I definitely caught a lot of what you were saying. Before we get to you, Ben, and then we're gonna start working on wrapping this episode up. I want to touch on something that you said about the South, right? And it's so ironic that our folks moved up here, Jim Crow, civil rights era. They moved north. A lot of our folks, when I study my own family history, they migrated from the South to the North for opportunities, right? And the more I'm studying as an educator, I'm studying a lot of education back on as far as back to 1800s in this country. And what I'm learning is that in the South, that there were these systems, these underground systems of organization that existed in terms of teachers and teachers unions. There were Black teachers unions who were operating on this whole underground system and maintaining Black communities that way. Now, there came a time when the Black teachers unions then gave up their unionship and integrated with white teacher unions. And this came part of integration in terms of your Brown versus Board of Education and things like that. And part of what they had to do is, at that point, they had to disown their own unions and their own organizations. And when I was studying these organizations, I was like, they had some complex organizations in the South, because the South sometimes gets a bad rap. But when Mark started talking about networking and things like that, those were the things that were occurring in the South for our folks. So I think that you bringing that to the forefront, Mark, is critical. And you can still see some of that living today down the way that you just explained, the South. So let's go on. Let's go on to you, Ben, in terms of survivor's remorse. And do you feel it's a thing, or do you feel some more like, Mark explained in terms of his feelings on it?
Yeah, so survivor's remorse, I know it's a real thing, but honestly, I don't have it, man. It took me a tremendous amount of work and sacrifice to get to the point I am right now in life. I'm not finished on this journey, but to get here, I messed up so bad between 18 to 20. I literally had to dig myself out of a hole. It was absolutely insane. So looking back at all of that hard work that I had to do, all of the sacrifice, all of the late nights. Sometimes I didn't sleep, sometimes I didn't eat. Um, I'm happy where I'm at. Like I don't feel bad about people that's not willing to put the work in. If you're willing and able and healthy and you just choose not to grind, I don't feel bad for you. You know what I'm saying? It'd be different if I was born with a silver spoon, came from a rich family and things like that, and I didn't really have to work for it. But nah, I'm out here really going hard. Like it's crazy, outworking everybody. You know what I'm saying? I'm not playing around. So I don't have survivor's remorse. You know what I'm saying? If you're not about getting to the bag and creating opportunities for yourself and your family, then we playing a different game.
This is like when I say this is exactly what we need. These are the kind of conversations that we need. I think it's critical. I want to hear from you, Ice. Duane, I'm sorry. I want to hear from you, Duane. Listen, I'm like Ice. He's like, yo, some of my, some of my contracts are on. Like, but no, I want to hear from you, bro. Like, what you feel in terms of survivor's remorse. I'm interested.
So I do have somewhat of a different take on survivor's remorse, survivor's guilt, and that's only because I align it to not being able to do more when I want to do more, and coming from the communities that we come from, coming from the community that I come from, there's institutional racism and social injustice and barriers that make it really hard. So not all of us do have the same opportunity, and I'm really thankful for really some key figures that were influential in my life, and my mom for really setting some really core principle standards. But I associate survivor's remorse with like, man, it like to even what Ben said, I work hard, I bust my ass to create these opportunities for myself, and I'm the same way. But even while I was, and this goes back to when I was in college, I always thought about how can I get more back to brown and black people in disadvantaged communities, you know what I'm saying? And the fact that I can't do it on, at this, when I want it done, it does, it leaves a little bit of hole. So, even though I'm always, I'm working, I'm doing relatively well from where I'm at in my life right now. I'm always working on something in addition for the community. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of times it's not at the forefront, it's behind the scenes because of the survivor's remorse. So I use it as a way where it's like, I know not everybody has the same opportunities. I know that, I didn't get here in this position on my own, whether it was my mom, my sister, guys in the community, a few role models, teachers. But I also know that, there's the youth. So, so survivor's remorse, I do feel it, and like, my legacy, of course, is going to be my children, right? My last name. But I also want to have an impact on the community because that survivor's remorse is like, a driving tool and component of who I am. You know what I'm saying? So that's my take on that.
Hey, Rawls, real quick.
Go ahead, bro.
So here's the thing. Like, no, all of us don't have the same opportunities, but I feel like it's a character trait that you might be born with, like to hustle. You could take somebody like Diddy, put him in the middle of freaking nowhere where there's no opportunities, and he's going to end up rich again. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's like us three, we've always had this characteristic. I don't know what it is. I remember growing up, freaking Ice, you had the moped, then you had that black car that smoked when you drove it. You know what I'm saying? Like anything that we seen, You know what I'm saying? We worked hard and we got it. I think that's just like something we born with. From slinging lollipops, you know what I'm saying, to DJing. Anything we put our mind to, basically, we're able to achieve. Like I said, I think that's something we're born with. I remember I really wanted to be a DJ, and Mark and Ice used to always make fun of me about this. Freshman year of high school, I was saving money. Don't laugh. So I walked around in these black Sauconys for a whole year, busted up, dirty. People used to make jokes, but at the end of the day, I was able to stack that bread and start a DJing business. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's you born a hustler. You know what I'm saying?
So Ben, here's what I'm gonna say. And this, we can have a whole hour, we can have 2-3 hours on this conversation. And I don't know if you all watch the movie, the Eddie Murphy movie, which is one of my favorite Eddie Murphy movies, Trading Places, right? Y'all ever watch that?
Yeah, Mortimer.
Okay, yes. So that movie, what we're talking about right now, that movie that's what it's all about. It's basically saying, is it environment that creates, outcomes, or is it this individual will that creates outcomes? If you've never watched Eddie Murphy's Trading Places as an adult, not as a kid, because when I watched it as a kid, I saw it totally different than watching it as an adult, because it touches on a lot of what we're talking about right now with nature versus nurture, or are you destined based on your environment to become a certain thing, or if there are these innate things within us that create kind of what you were saying, Ben, this hustle, if you want to call it a hustler's mentality, like wherever I'm at, I'm gonna make good, you know what I'm saying? So it's like you start getting into that, and that movie touches on it a bunch. I go back and forth. All right. I go back and forth. Like sometimes I say, yo, this because like I was born, like I know Jay-Z, y'all talked about R.O.C, Jay-Z, like Jay-Z get into a lot of that. Like, yo, I was born. I was born a hustler. No matter where you put me, this is where it's gonna come. But then like Ice and Duane, like Duane brought up, is like, yo, but there are some circumstances within our communities that make it more difficult for you, no matter how you were born, to kind of come up out of that, But then going back to what Mark is saying is like, yo, no matter what, I don't care what your circumstances are, you can overcome. So it's a lot that goes into this conversation and this discussion that's deep. And I think that that's what makes it very difficult, because I struggle with it, because on a lower level, on a surface level, you know what it comes back down to is it comes back down to keeping it real, because we're getting on a high level, but at the bottom level, it's like, yo, keep it real, Rawls. Keep it real, Mark. Keep it real, Duane. Keep it real, Ben. And we're always pressured with keeping it real. And when we got to be pressured with that, we're thinking like, yo, all right, did I get a break? You know what I'm saying? And Mark, you look like you want to talk. Go ahead and jump in.
Well,
yeah, I got something.
What I had to touch on is going to a top-notch HBCU like North Carolina A&T. I'm not going to say I'm not empathetic to people's situations, but I went to school with people that had stories way worse than mine, came from situations way worse than mine, didn't have two nickels to rub together, and now they're chemical engineers. Now they're top-notch accountants. If there's a will, there's a way. If you are, like you said, if you don't have health issues, you can make it. Like, you just got to have the drive. So that's why I don't have survivor's remorse. I didn't meet all these people that I went to school with that come from way worse, like I said, come from Camden, come from the toughest parts of the country, and got to school and excelled, and they didn't have money. They didn't have parents sending them money every month, but they just had to drive to win, and they wasn't going to let nobody stop them. I would understand more, but I've seen too many people that came from nothing, didn't have any help, didn't have no real help, and still made it. So that's why I don't really have survivor's remorse.
Now, you're absolutely right, Mark. I feel the same way, because I went to an HBCU, Morgan State, the greatest HBCU, the Morgan State. You know what I'm saying? But here, you feel me, Ice? But nah, here's the thing, though, man. Like, we move different in these streets. We different. We not your average dudes. We out here putting that extra work in. We doing things that people don't want to do. You know what I'm saying? None of us were born rich, but we the ones that's still self-educating. We text each other, what books you reading right now? You know what I'm saying? I read textbooks for fun sometimes. I'm reading about Microsoft Access just because I like to learn. But we do things like that. The average person isn't willing, to really do that extra work. And that's kind of what separates the top people from the average people or the people that don't make it. You know what I'm saying?
So I do know what you're saying. But here's what I'm going to ask you. Because here's what I'm going to ask you. Let me just put it out there, right? Can we create opportunities and situations where we're providing young people and even older folks the opportunity to engage in these kind of conversations and raising them up when they need to be raised up to a level of consciousness that maybe they're not on? Can we do that? Or is it a lost cause? Is it like, all right, if you ain't put that work in back 10, 20 years ago, then it can't happen for you?
It starts with mentorship, Rawls. You need positive role models like the R.O.C provided us. We kind of had to figure it out. I know for the most part, I had to figure it out on my own through failure. You know what I'm saying? But we can definitely change the narrative through mentorship and reaching out to the youth and being a positive example to them and sharing our stories with them and helping steer them the right way. It's not a lost cause.
And that because the reason I brought that up is one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to get into education was to have these kind of conversations with young folks. Because I think that sometimes people can feel like they're written off and that, this world, I can't create in this world. I can't be who I need to be in this world. This world is not set up for me to succeed. Whether you want to talk about the system holding me down, the man holding me down, whatever way you want to put it, but I was like, I want to get into this space to be like, there is a way, you know what I'm saying? So I say that to now say this. What I think right now, more than ever, a lot of our young people are home. They're not in school buildings. They're not receiving education in a traditional fashion. The real education, to me, is a lot of what we're talking about right now. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I think that there's a deeper education. I always tell my own children, I tell my 10-year-old, my 12-year-old, there are two educations, all right? There is the one that you're going to get because we pay taxes. You're going to go to a public school, or if I choose private, whatever, my kids go to public school, you're going to get that education. But there's another education that you have to seek out. There's another education that you have to, is more self-reliant. It's more of what you willing to put in. And I'm at the point where I'm like, how do we create those channels of education that may be different than what's happening in public schools, that may be different than what's happening systematically? This is my 10th episode. I really feel, and I'm putting this out there, if I took these 10 episodes in the work that these 10 guests have put in over a lifetime, we can create a 10-week course, easy, where young people would be able to be like, yo, I got more out of that than I got out of, you know what I'm saying? Like going to school every day, doing this, doing that. So that, I'm like, how do we move to that? How do we move to what you all are putting out there, what you all are talking to, how do we move to putting that in the hands and the minds of our young people? Somebody was unmuting. I don't know. Go ahead in if somebody want to hop in there. I think was it Ben?
So I guess first thing you would have to define the end goal, what you're trying to achieve with this program, because as stated currently, it sounds pretty broad. I think there's key things that all young people should know. One of them being personal finance and investing. I think that's very important. I'm not sure why it's not stressed more in school, but that's a very good starting point right there. It don't matter how much money you make. If you don't know what to do with it when you have it, you're still gonna be broke. You can make $250,000 a year and be broke. You know what I'm saying? People getting over leveraged, taking on too much debt, credit, like things like that traditionally is not taught in school. That's a good starting point. And then from there, I think we can kind of develop because really it all boils down to a mind state shift. You need to shift your way of thinking. That comes with experience and wisdom, but it also comes from reading books. I was blessed someone gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad at a very early age. I think 19. Read that thing on the airplane going to Miami. And man, did that book change my life, changed my whole way of thinking. I remember growing up, I was flashy, man. I had gold chains and Coogee sweaters and Iceberg, and all the money that I had, I would just spend it as soon as I got it. That's kind of what you did in Long Branch. You ball. You look up to people like Micah. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Those are role models. He driving Rangers. We like trying to keep up with them as young kids. But it's all a mentality shift. You know what I'm saying? And that just comes from reading good books, good mentors, and education.
Thank you. Anyone else want to hop on that?
Yeah, I think there's some fundamental principles that definitely could be applied, and I think it kind of goes when you go back to the survivor's remorse. There's a lack of exposure, and I know Mark mentioned that he was working at Deal Golf Course. I remember being in middle school. I was working at the Imperial House as a cabana boy, basically putting up beach chairs and umbrellas for wealthy white folks. And now I'm in a position to give my child exposure to music lessons, dance lessons. I have a wife that emphasizes the importance of education. And also this goes back to my roots when I think about my mom, leaving the house at 8 a.m, not coming home at 10 p.m, demonstrating a strong work ethic and pretty much working hard for everything that we had. And she would always say, it's not where you live, it's how you live. So I think there's some fundamental principles that we gotta, and Dr. Rawls, you mentioned that you were reminded of greatness. And at some point people reminded of us of greatness. And I think we got to get back to, to our roots and our history. You know what I'm saying? Nas had the song Ultra Black just to kind of remind us, like, we're great. Black is beautiful. And I think it's important for our communities to know, like, we're not what you see on TV as far as the killings. We're not just athletes and rappers, or we're more than that. We're educators. We're commodity brokers. We're government contract managers. And I think we need to collaborate more and actually practice group economics and community involvement and get back to those things. And until we can actually love one another and appreciate our greatness and our potential, that's the foundation. And I think about, we're talking about Black teachers and Black educators. And I joke with my wife all the time, but in first grade, my teacher was Mrs. Barnes, Black teacher. And, she was, my family at that time, between my mom and my dad, my dad died at 44, which is, something that motivates me to be, to be there for my kids. I look at his death certificate, he died at 44. And that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, we all work our ass off, but, there's some of these kids, if you don't have a positive male role model in your life, at a young age, and we starting to see it now, because my wife, the kids, when she first starting to graduate high school, and you kind of can, you kind of can feel which students need a little bit more love and support and nurturing, So, to start a program, you got to have strong male, female representation, really, and it has to be built on love, culture, history, greatness, and all those things that Ben talked about: personal finance, credit, real estate, income, industry, career, and all that stuff. That's important, right? Because that's how we're going to take care of our families. But to actually, build up a community and to be able to give back and duplicate, the foundation got to be solid. So that's why, to build that program, yeah, but it's all about executing and how you, and actually having that foundation to build on,
Hey, Ice. So you mentioned, I think you said collaboration or something, but that just got me to thinking, we also, as a culture, we need to be more open with each other and sharing. If you see somebody, say a person, I don't know, people ask me all the time. I got 3-4 houses or whatever, right? People are like, man, how do you do that? And I share. I literally tell them how to do it exactly, step by step. Here's how I got my loan. Here's how I got the grant. Here's how much I'm making off this tenant. Here's my profit margin. Things like that. Like, we need to be willing to help each other and not keep things a secret. Like, it's not a competition. Like, we need to uplift each other, man. Like, people ask me all the time things. Like, I don't mind getting on the phone or getting on a call and helping somebody out. Like, I just feel like as a culture, we're kind of like, we keep things to ourselves.
You know what I think it is? I think it's a capacity issue, right? Because none of us had a head start. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have insurance money or real estate passed down to us, right? So for us, it's not that we're selfish. And I'm not talking about sharing knowledge, but we got to bust our ass to be able to provide a living for our families. So it comes back to having the capacity to be able to do more. And I think that's why it's so important that, for one, you work hard during those, that time in high school and those 4 years that you mentioned after high school, so you can kind of get ahead. And then at some point, you want, for me at least, I want to be able to dedicate a chapter in my life to community outreach. But it's not easy. If I'm working, getting up at 6, doing research, preparing for client appointments and stuff like that, then I come home, I want to spend time with my family, cooking, all that stuff. You also got to have the capacity to do a lot more. So sometimes you can't measure, you got to measure somebody was in their heart and their intent. But, for me, it's always just been a capacity issue.
Yo, y'all really drop. There's so much more that we can get into, and I feel like we scratched a lot of surface today. Even in these I feel like the last 20 minutes or half hour, like, we start getting deep into like, yo, this is what I believe. You know what I'm saying? But I think that those things are important, and we all have different perspectives on things. And I think that what I would love to do is flush those things out more in separate episodes. I feel like Wu-Tang right now. Like, this was Enter the 36 Chambers, but then after that, we're gonna have the Raekwon, we're gonna have Cuban Links, we're gonna have Liquid Swords. Like, we're gonna have these different episodes that come off of this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like this is the group episode, but then we're gonna hit all of y'all on some individual episodes to get deeper into your individual stories and what has created who you are. Because right now, the folks I'm trying to get this to, there's a Mark out there who needs to hear this. There's a Duane out there who needs to hear this. There's a Ben out there who needs to hear this. So that's why I feel like I got to go deeper into your own individual stories. And we're going to do that. I'm going to reach out to y'all. Y'all all on the hook right now. Y'all got to come out. But with that said, what I always like to do, and I'm gonna chunk this to my education teachers out there, my early education teachers out there. You talk about chunking. I want to put two things into one. I want to go around to close out. I want to go around to ask two things. The one thing that I always ask is that, like, if there's some advice that you would give to your younger self, what would that advice be, right? And then the second thing that I always like to ask, outside of being, is just closing. Like, if there's anything you want to put out there in terms of closing. So there's two things I want to ask. If there's advice to your younger self, and if you can go in this order, if there's advice that you would give to your younger self, and then the second thing is in terms of closing, if there's any thoughts or anything you want to get out there, you can get out there. So let's start with Mark.
The advice I would give to my younger self is, like Ben said, growing up in Long Branch, when we were younger, every dollar we get, we would spend on clothes. I remember getting whole checks, catching a bus to Mama's Mall, going to Epic and spend $300. I was making $300 a week, and I spent the whole my whole 300 on clothes. So what I would tell my younger self is I don't have to be flashy to be fly, I guess. Don't spend all your money on flashy things. The first part of my life, when I graduated from A&T, I went and bought a $40,000 vehicle, and I was only making $42,000 a year when I came out of college. And I'm thinking I'm rich because I had never seen no real money my life. So when I saw 42,000, I thought I was rich. So I went and bought a big car, and now I make substantially more money, but I live less. I live underneath my means. The last 10 years of my life, I've lived under my means. And I would say if I could go back to my younger self, I would say always try to live under your means and don't try to be flashy. And what I put out there to everyone is work hard, study hard, reach your goals, set goals, and work towards them every day, and you can accomplish anything.
Yo, that's peace. That's peace, Mark. That living, like, I didn't learn to live beneath my means probably until I got to be like maybe 28, 29. And I was a principal. I was a principal of a high school. I was a principal at, I think, 29. And I didn't learn to live beneath my means until after that. And I think back, it's funny because I was dating this one girl and I was young. And I was probably like under 25, right? And I was trying to get this Lexus. At the time, I was trying to get like this GS 300, right? So I was saying to the parent of this girl, I was like, yo, I mean, I'm making good money. I got this, I got that. They won't approve me for the loan. And she was like, well, maybe the reason why is because you have X, Y, and Z, meaning all of these other accounts that are open and that have high credit limits. And I never realized that. Like, it was like, yo, like, I was like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, that was a different language to me. And then I began to understand that, you talk about net worth, which I want to get into more with you all. You start understanding net worth. You start understanding, y'all all, a lot of you, I don't know if all three of you, but at least two of you mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You start understanding that and you're like, yo, I'm out here tripping. I'm out here bugging. How can I possibly create a legacy for my kids if I'm living like this, saying right now, just trying to ball out, and I don't care what the interest rate is. I don't care, what this, that, and the other is. So that's real talk. So I want to get back to finish up with you, Ice, and finishing up with you, Ben, in terms of finding out if there's two things we want to talk about. We want to close out the show, but we also want to give some advice to your younger self. So let's start with you, Ben.
So my younger self, there's a couple different things. I guess invest early and invest often. When I got my first job at Food Town, I just left money on the table. You know what I'm saying? They were matching, I think, 5 or 6% back then, probably more. I didn't have a 401k. I was tripping. So like that money from age 16, if I would have just invested it and left it alone now, would be worth so much. Like, yeah, it'd be insane. So like, I didn't start investing until later in life. I didn't really see the value in it. But if I could go back and talk to my 16-year-old self, listen, man, take a piece of change and at least get that employer match. And that's a 100% return on your investment right there. Just put into the match and just let the money grow. I'd also tell my younger self, make sure you're using condoms because you don't want to have a baby too early in life. And yeah, that's all I got.
Yo, that's a lot. You dropped a lot. Shout out to Miss Coleman, Miss B. Coleman. When my first year teaching, she said, I'm gonna get you in a pension. And I was like, give me in a pension? Not first year teaching, my first year substituting. She's like, I'm gonna try to get you in a pension. I was like, what do you mean give me in a pension? I had no idea what that meant. You know what I'm saying? So this is like 1997, 98. And I was subbing and she was like, I'm gonna try to find a way to get you in a pension. That made me start saying, well, what the hell is a pension? And then when I started working as a teacher, I had some teachers who would say, yo, get in a tax shelter. And I'm like, what the hell is a tax? Because these are conversations that I never had with like any family members. No one was talking about a tax shelter, and then I started understanding like, oh, wow, they talking about long-term goals long term, because these are not, as you all know, these are not quick turnarounds. These are not like you do it for a year, you straight. This is like you want to build legacy, do that for 20 years. Do that for 25 years. And you'll begin to see like, yo, I'm creating a net worth that's going to outlive me. So thank you for sharing that. You know, man, I think that's good advice. We're going to end with you, Ice, Duane. We're going to end with you. Oh, you muted.
Ice, you got to unmute, Ice.
You were muted, Ice.
Apologize. No, if I could go back to my younger self, I would say, don't be afraid to try, new things. I would get more exposure. I would have spent, time after school, maybe in the chess club or the golf club or the debate club. I might have ran track in high school. I would have done a little bit more. Just to get that experience, that life experience, because that's just a whole new layer that would prepare me for adulthood. And then just kind of to leave off, I agree with both what Mark and Ben said. And I think today there's so much opportunity, especially this year when you think about 2020, the pandemic, right? Whether you're working from home, you were laid off, collecting unemployment, you lost your job, or maybe you experienced some health issues. You take this time, this opportunity that we have to think about what's important to you, set those goals now, establish, how do you want to think about legacy, your long-term vision, your long-term goals, and really leverage technology, man. Cell phones changed everything today. People can create businesses off, in 10 minutes. You can form an LLC in a matter of, 10, 20 minutes. There's so many opportunities today, but you have to seek it, and seek mentorship, seek sponsorship. Now, at a young age, I wish I maybe attached on to a few mentors, earlier. That probably would have, gave me a little bit more momentum and excel my growth. So, seek out mentorship, seek out sponsorship, and, take advantage of, opportunities. There's no failures, there's just setbacks. And, that's how I like to leave off.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you. I've watched all three of you, and all three of you have inspired and impacted a lot of what I do. Whether is Mark, you doing the whole, like having these different, and I won't even say like properties, because I love the way in the way that you're attacking the properties in terms of making sure you're creating opportunities for those who may not have opportunities. And then a lot of what you're working on is through providing this housing to those who may not find housing to come easy. And I think that that's very, very important. And I watched that, Ben, when you talk about multiple houses and properties, yo, you talking right now, myself, I am a single property owner, right? And my whole thing is like, yo, I got to get to that level of having multiple properties, and not just so I can ball out, but because I understand that is going to increase legacy for my children. You understand what I'm saying? So like, it's not even like, it's not this self-absorbing thing. It's for that. And then going to you, Duane, is, you and I have had a lot of conversations, in terms of building community and what it takes to build a community and finding opportunities for young folks. You've always been a teacher to me, and when I say that, I mean, you've always had like, yo, I want to get into this so that I can teach more people how to do this. So I can show more people how to do this. And I remember going back to a lunch that we had probably maybe 8 years ago or so, and we would talk about incubators. And the crazy thing is now, Ice, you don't know how many times I kick myself. Incubators, that's like when we were talking about it and you brought that to my attention. I won't even say you were talking about that. You brought that to my attention. That was before it was a buzzword. That was before people were like, yo, start these incubators. You were talking about that in 2012. We went and had a lunch in Asbury in 2012. You were talking about incubators. And Now you go Google it. Like everybody's talking that language. So what you all have done is inspired me. And what I want to do is branch that out so it inspires more of our community. So all of you, I am going to be reaching back to you in order to have these solo interviews, because I think all of you deserve that. And our community needs to hear more about your individual stories, and some of your beliefs and philosophies and some of the things you live by. So I want to thank you all three of you.
Before we wrap up,
go ahead, bro.
I never told Ice and Mark, I never told y'all, but man, y'all, I looked up to you guys, man. And that when man, y'all was finishing college and starting families, and like, y'all were like huge. That was huge. Like, so y'all were like the positive, I guess, role models for me. Like, I really looked up to you guys and like, damn, I got to get my stuff together. Like, they out here crushing it, and I'm not doing anything with myself. So just seeing you guys, just out there killing it in life, that was very inspirational to me, man. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
My pleasure, Ben. And I also want to let you know your Saucony story. That I didn't do that in high school, but I had a similar situation from like 24 to 28 and a half, 25, 29, when I was trying to pay off my house. I thought about how you grinded for that year and rock Sauconys. Like, I drove a Nissan, like a 98 Nissan Sentra stick shift that was, I paid $2,800 for, and I didn't spend a lot of money. I didn't go on no fancy trips, but I always thought about you and how you stacked up your money. I appreciate that life gem, and I still use it in my day-to-day life, bro. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate you for having me on too, Dr. Ross. It's a great thing you got going on here, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
No doubt. Thank you, fam. Thank you. Thank all of y'all. Those of you tuned in today, a shout out to the Rock Resolve It. Who would have thought, when Ms. Gilmore called me in, like, yo, you need to get a part of it.
Hey, you gotta shout out Terrence Wilkins too, because he had a lot to do with the Rock too. We can't forget about Terrence Wilkins.
True story. T. Wilkes. And it's funny because I think T. Wilkes may have left the year I came in. Damn, it's crazy you said that, because I think that was a big reason why Miss Gilmore brought me in, because I think T. Wilkes had left to go to Red Bank at that point. He had left to go to another district for another job, and there was an absence of a black man. So, I'm happy you just, it's funny because that's why we all need to be together, because we forget some of these pieces. But definitely a shout out to T. Wilkes, who's doing his thing down in Atlanta. He's out in Atlanta now. Definitely a shout out to that brother, who was another pioneer when you start talking, because he was a counselor at the school at the time. I wish I would have had more time with T. Wilkes. Like that's the kind of the dude and the man he was, but definitely a shout. I'm glad you mentioned that, Mark, because that's definitely true. That's definitely true. Shout out to T. Wilkes for the role that he played in R.O.C. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna close out, and I want to say that this conversation, we've been together. It's almost been 2 hours now. But it was definitely well worth it. And I hope that the community finds the worth and the value in the discussions that we have. And I promise that I'm going to reach out to each of these three brothers, and we're going to do their own episode where they get to go deeper into their own stories and their own truths on this show. So with that said, I want to wish everyone a great week. A work week, a homeschooling week, whatever it is that you're doing, because I know it's real out there right now in our communities and in these streets. It's real. Stay healthy, and stay well. So with that, I say peace to the family who.
It's a 9-core banger. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Yeah, purpose and practice. Keep your mental sharp. Learn all the tactics. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Yeah, purpose and practice. Podcast game. He got it mastered. Sign call. It's an encore banger.